A man fed a wolf for 7 days. A bond was formed in the wild, a promise made without words. 5 years later, their destinies would cross again in the depths of the forest. But what happens next will shock you. Before we dive into this incredible journey of survival, trust, and transformation, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on more heartwarming stories like this one. The forest was always quiet, almost eerily so. Adam had grown used to it. His life had been a quiet one, filled with the routine of chopping wood, hunting, and tending to his small cabin. But even the serenity of nature couldn't keep his mind at ease. The weight of solitude had settled on him like a blanket he could never quite shake off. One evening, as dusk painted the sky in shades of violet and orange, Adam was returning to his cabin after a long day in the woods. His heart pounded in his chest from the brisk walk, his breath visible in the cool air. He thought he heard something. A soft whimper, a faint rustle. It was so faint, he almost dismissed it. But then he saw her. A wolf, her fur matted with blood and dirt, lay collapsed at the edge of a clearing. Her chest rose and fell in shallow breaths, and Adam could see the sharp pain in her amber eyes. Her body trembled, and her legs were clearly injured. She had been running, fleeing from something, or someone. Adam froze. He had never seen a creature like this so close. The wilderness was full of wolves, but this one, despite her injuries, had an unmistakable aura of strength. She wasn't just any wolf. There was something ancient and wild in her eyes. Without thinking, Adam knelt beside her, his heart pounding in his ears. He didn't know what possessed him to reach out, but he gently placed his hand on her trembling body. The wolf flinched at first, but then seemed to calm, as if sensing he meant no harm. "I won't hurt you," Adam whispered softly, his voice almost a prayer. He had no idea what he was doing. He was just a man, and she was a wild creature. But something deep inside told him that fate had brought them together, even if for only a moment. Over the next few days, Adam kept her hidden in the woods near his cabin. He brought her food, wild berries, scraps of meat, and water from the nearby stream. Each day she grew stronger, her injuries healing slowly, and each day their bond deepened. At night, when the forest was dark and silent, the two of them sat together, Adam resting against the base of an ancient oak tree while the wolf lay beside him. They didn't speak. There was no need for words. There was only the quiet understanding between them, an unspoken promise that, for however long she needed it, Adam would protect her. On the 7th day, Adam woke to find the wolf staring at him, her amber eyes burning with a kind of knowing he couldn't fully understand. Her body was fully healed now. The bond they'd formed, the trust they'd shared, had been forged in these quiet moments of mutual dependence. But as the sun rose over the horizon, the wolf stood, her legs strong and steady. She glanced back at Adam, her eyes filled with a strange mixture of gratitude and sadness. Then, without a sound, she turned and disappeared into the forest. Adam watched her go, his heart heavy with an emotion he couldn't name. She was gone, just as quickly as she had come. But the forest felt different now. It felt as if she had left something behind, something more than a memory. He never saw her again, not for 5 years. 5 years passed since that day. The memory of the wolf, reunite, faded slowly, like a distant dream that you can never quite remember, but always feel lingering in the back of your mind. Adam had returned to his life, as quiet and solitary as before. The world outside had changed, but inside his cabin, he had no need for anything more. Then it started. The strange occurrences, the rumors that spread in town, whispers of strange creatures spotted in the forest. Some claimed they saw wolves with eyes that glowed like fire, hunting in packs unlike anything the locals had ever known. And Adam, well, he just shook his head. After all, it was only a wild story, wasn't it? But late one evening, while Adam was chopping wood just outside his cabin, he heard it, an eerie howl that carried on the wind, unmistakable in its tone. It was a sound that made his blood run cold. The howl sent a chill through him, as if the forest itself were calling him back. Instinctively, Adam grabbed his rifle and started toward the woods, despite every warning his mind screamed. He knew the forest well, too well, and it was the last place he wanted to be after dark. Yet his feet seemed to carry him forward, each step guided by something other than reason. Deep within the trees, Adam found himself in a clearing he hadn't visited in years. The place felt different now, darker, more alive in a way that unsettled him. There, standing in the shadows, was a figure, too large to be a regular wolf. Her amber eyes locked onto his, and in that instant, Adam knew. It was her. Luna. But she wasn't the same. The wolf who had once been vulnerable and broken was now a force of nature. Her coat gleamed silver under the moonlight, and her stance was powerful, regal. She looked at him, and for a moment Adam saw something in her eyes, a flicker of recognition, but also a distant, unfamiliar coldness. As Luna stepped into the clearing, a shadow moved beside her, and Adam's heart sank. Another figure emerged, a man cloaked in darkness, his eyes gleaming like the wolves. He stepped forward with an air of quiet menace. "You found her, didn't you?" the man said, his voice smooth like silk, yet carrying a threat that Adam couldn't ignore. "She's mine now." The man's presence was overwhelming, a dark energy that seemed to warp the very air around them. Adam instinctively gripped the rifle tighter, his pulse racing. "What do you mean yours?" Adam demanded, taking a step back. The man smiled, almost pityingly. "Luna is not just a wolf. She's part of something much bigger. She belongs to me and to the others who serve me." He gestured toward the shadowed forest as if the very trees were under his command. "But I can see it in your eyes. You remember her, don't you? The bond you shared." "It's not gone, Adam." Adam's grip on his rifle tightened, but his words faltered. There was something wrong, something unnatural about the situation. He could feel it deep in his gut. Luna wasn't just a wolf anymore. She had changed, become something more. "You think you can just take her away?" Adam asked, his voice rising in defiance, even though he felt the odds stacking against him. The man's smile twisted into something darker. "I don't need to take her, Adam. She's already mine. But perhaps you could still be useful. If you join me, you could be part of something greater than either of us could imagine." Adam's heart pounded, torn between the man's sinister offer and the wolf standing before him. Luna's gaze held a strange depth now. She was no longer just a creature of the wild. She was part of something darker, something controlled. Adam was faced with a choice he never expected to make. Could he save Luna from this force, or had the bond between them already been broken? The wind howled through the trees again, and for a moment, Adam couldn't tell if it was the forest calling to him, or if it was Luna herself, reminding him of the promise they had made all those years ago. Adam's heart raced as the man's words echoed in his mind. Luna was no longer the wolf he had cared for. She was something else now, something far more dangerous. The forest seemed to close in around him, the shadows growing longer with every passing moment. The man, still cloaked in darkness, smiled again, as if he could sense Adam's fear. "Don't worry, Adam," he said softly, almost like a whisper in the wind. "You'll come to understand. Everyone does in time." Luna's eyes flickered toward the man before meeting Adam's gaze again. Her expression was unreadable. She wasn't the same animal he had fed and healed 5 years ago. Her eyes, once filled with vulnerability, now held an unsettling emptiness, as if some part of her had been lost. Adam's hands trembled as he gripped the rifle, but he didn't lower it. His mind raced with questions. Who was this man, and how had Luna become entwined in his dark world? The man stepped forward, his movements fluid and precise, like a predator moving through its territory. "I am the Master of Shadows," he said, as if the title alone was enough to explain everything. "I control these woods and all the creatures within them. Luna," he said, turning to the wolf, "was always meant to be part of my pack. You were simply a passing moment in her life, Adam. A brief interlude." Adam's jaw clenched. "You don't know anything about her." The Master of Shadows raised an eyebrow. "I know everything about her. She's not just any wolf. She is one of the chosen, a key to something much larger." He glanced toward the dense forest as if the trees themselves were waiting for his command. "And you, Adam, You're just the man who fed her when she needed it. But it won't be enough. Not now." The words hit Adam like a slap in the face. He had fed her, cared for her, saved her, and now he was nothing more than a pawn in a game he didn't understand. But one thing was certain. He couldn't let this man have her, not after everything they had shared. "You don't control her," Adam spat, his voice steady despite the rising fear. "I won't let you." The Master of Shadows laughed, a sound that sent shivers down Adam's spine. "You think you can stop me? You think you can stop the wolves of the dark? Luna is already part of something far greater than you, Adam. She's part of me now." For a moment, Adam felt hopeless. The forest around him seemed to close in tighter, the trees looming like silent witnesses to this twisted confrontation. He glanced at Luna, trying to find the familiar spark of recognition in her eyes, the connection they once had, but all he saw was the cold, calculating gaze of the wolf he no longer knew. But then something shifted. Luna moved closer to Adam, her steps slow and deliberate. The Master of Shadows watched her closely, his face a mask of annoyance. "She's only following her instincts. She'll come around." But as Luna stood before Adam, her gaze softened, just for a moment. In that brief second, Adam saw it. The spark of the wolf he had once cared for, the wild, untamed spirit that had trusted him. She was still in there, and despite the darkness surrounding them, Adam refused to believe she was lost forever. "You don't own her," Adam said, his voice gaining strength, "and you never will." The Master of Shadows' expression hardened, his eyes narrowing. "You're a fool, but you'll learn soon enough. The forest is mine, Adam, and soon you'll be nothing more than a memory." With that, the Master of Shadows turned and melted into the darkness, leaving Adam and Luna standing alone in the clearing. The wind howled around them, but this time it felt different. Adam's heart raced, his thoughts a whirlwind of anger and fear. Luna looked at him one last time, her amber eyes filled with something he couldn't quite place. Regret? Hope? Or was it simply the cold, silent acceptance of what had been? Adam knew this was only the beginning. The Master of Shadows had warned him. But Adam wouldn't back down. Luna might have changed, but their bond wasn't broken. Not yet. The forest was no longer a sanctuary. It had become a battlefield. Adam had spent days trying to track Luna, but it was as if the very woods themselves were conspiring against him. Every path he followed seemed to lead him further from his goal. He could feel the presence of the Master of Shadows looming over him, his dark influence stretching across the trees. It was as if the forest was no longer the peaceful haven he once knew, but a place where fear and control had taken root. Each step he took felt heavier than the last, his mind swirling with doubts. Could he truly save Luna from whatever darkness had consumed her? Or had she already fallen too far into the grip of the Master? The thought gnawed at him, but Adam refused to give up. Days turned into nights, and Adam grew weary, both physically and emotionally. His food supply dwindled, and the weight of his isolation pressed on him harder than ever. He hadn't spoken to a soul since his confrontation with the Master. The only sound was the howling wind and the occasional rustle of leaves underfoot. But then, in the dead of night, a voice cut through the stillness. "Adam?" It was Luna's voice. Or was it? His heart leaped in his chest as he spun around, searching the dark forest for the source of the sound. He couldn't see her, couldn't hear anything more, yet the voice had been unmistakable. She was calling to him. "Luna?" Adam whispered into the night, his voice trembling. There was no answer, only the eerie rustling of the wind. Adam's pulse quickened. The voice had been so real, he couldn't ignore it. He couldn't walk away again. With renewed determination, Adam plunged deeper into the forest. He had to find her, whatever it took. The trees closed in on him, their branches like fingers reaching out to pull him deeper into the darkness. But he didn't care. He would follow that voice, even if it led him straight into the heart of the storm. Hours passed, and Adam was starting to lose hope. His legs were heavy, his chest tight with exhaustion. He hadn't eaten in days, and the cold was beginning to seep into his bones. But just as he was about to give up, he heard it again. "Adam." The voice was clearer this time, It was coming from just ahead, deeper into the forest. Adam's heart skipped a beat. This time, he knew he couldn't turn back. As he approached the source of the voice, his eyes finally caught sight of her. Luna stood in a clearing, her fur shining in the moonlight, her amber eyes glowing faintly. But she wasn't alone. The Master of Shadows stood beside her, his hands raised in some kind of strange, ritualistic gesture. He was chanting softly, his words incomprehensible, but filled with an unnatural power. The air around them crackled with dark energy. Luna's eyes met Adam's, and for a brief moment, the wolf seemed to recognize him. There was a flicker of the wolf he had once known in her gaze, but just as quickly, it disappeared, replaced by a cold emptiness. The Master turned slowly, sensing Adam's presence. "I see you've come to claim her back," he said, his voice low and mocking. "But it's too late, Adam. Luna is no longer the creature you remember. She has a greater purpose now." Adam stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. "I don't care about your purpose. I'm here to bring her back." The Master smiled, a cruel, twisted grin. "You think you can save her? You think you can pull her from the darkness? It's not that simple." Adam's voice was steady, his anger rising. "I'll do whatever it takes. I won't leave her to you." The Master's smile faltered. "Then you'll have to sacrifice something, Adam. You can't save her without paying the price. Are you ready to make that choice?" Adam's blood ran cold. A sacrifice? What could he possibly give up that would be enough to break Luna free from this curse? His mind raced with possibilities, but no answer seemed to make sense. The Master of Shadows knew he had Adam cornered. "Think carefully," the Master continued, his voice dripping with malice. "The price will be high, Adam. I promise you that." Adam's eyes locked on Luna's, and for a moment he saw the wolf, the wild creature he had once cared for, the one he had promised to protect. Her eyes flickered with something, a flash of emotion, hope, regret. It was impossible to tell, but it was enough to ignite something in Adam's heart. He knew what he had to do. It wasn't about the price. He would pay whatever was required to save her. Luna had given him a reason to fight, a reason to live. He would never back down. "I'll do it," Adam said, his voice firm. "I'll sacrifice whatever it takes." The Master of Shadows tilted his head, intrigued. "Are you sure, Adam? Once you make the choice, there's no going back." Adam nodded, his resolve stronger than ever. "I'm sure I will save her." The air in the clearing was thick with tension. The Master of Shadows' eyes gleamed as Adam's words echoed through the stillness, a silent promise of something dark to come. Adam stood firm, his heart hammering in his chest, but his resolve unshaken. He had made his choice. There was no turning back now. Luna's eyes flickered between Adam and the Master, her body tense, her fur bristling under the moonlight. She was no longer the wolf he had once known. She had become an enigma, a creature of darkness with a soul tied to the Master's twisted will. But in the depths of her amber gaze, Adam could still see a glimmer of the wolf who had trusted him, the wolf who had followed him through the trials of survival. The Master of Shadows studied Adam closely, as if trying to gauge his sincerity. "You have no idea what you're offering, do you?" he said, his voice low and menacing. "You think you can save her with some noble sacrifice? The cost of freeing her from my control is beyond anything you can comprehend." Adam's grip tightened around the rifle he still held, though he knew the weapon would do him no good here. It wasn't a fight of strength, it was a battle of wills. "I don't care what it costs. I won't let you take her." The Master smirked. "Very well. If you truly understand the price, then let us see if you're willing to pay it." With a swift motion, the Master raised his arms, and a wave of dark energy rippled through the forest. The trees groaned as if in pain, the very earth beneath Adam's feet trembling. The air grew colder, and the sky above darkened, shrouded in an unnatural storm. Luna growled low, her eyes flashing with a mix of confusion and fear. She took a hesitant step forward, as if torn between her bond to Adam and the pull of the Master's power. Adam could feel the weight of her indecision, the struggle within her, and it tore at him. She wasn't lost. Not yet. He could still save her. The Master's laughter echoed through the clearing, a chilling sound that made the blood run cold. "You truly think you can fight me?" he taunted. "You're nothing compared to the power I wield. Your sacrifice won't change a thing." But Adam refused to back down. He stepped closer to Luna, his eyes never leaving hers. "I will never abandon you," he said, his voice firm, filled with a strength he didn't know he had. Luna's amber eyes softened for a brief moment, and Adam saw it, her recognition. She remembered him. She remembered their bond, and in that moment, he knew what he had to do. Without warning, Adam threw the rifle aside and stepped forward into the heart of the dark energy that surrounded them. The storm of power crackled around him, but he felt no fear. All he felt was a burning determination to save the wolf who had once saved him. The master's expression twisted in disbelief. "No, you fool!" he shouted, his voice cracking with rage. "You've sealed your fate." Adam's body was engulfed in light, the energy swirling around him like a whirlwind. He felt his strength drain, his mind spinning with the intensity of the magic, but his heart remained steady. He had made the ultimate sacrifice, not just his life, but his soul. He was giving everything for Luna. There would be no return, no redemption. But in that moment, Adam didn't care. All that mattered was the wolf. Luna stood motionless, watching him. Her eyes widened as the light from Adam's sacrifice enveloped her. The Master of Shadows screamed in fury, but his power was no match for the bond that Adam and Luna had shared. The dark energy began to unravel, the storm dissipating as the light grew stronger, pushing the Master back into the depths of the forest where he belonged. And then, just as quickly as it had all started, the forest fell silent. Adam collapsed to his knees, exhausted, his body weak from the power he had just unleashed. The world around him seemed to fade, and for a moment, he thought he might slip into darkness, but then a soft nudge against his hand brought him back. Luna stood before him, her fur shimmering in the moonlight, her amber eyes filled with an unmistakable warmth. She was free, truly free, and it was because of him. Luna's head lowered, and with a single gentle nudge, she licked Adam's face, a sign of gratitude, of love. The bond they had shared all those years ago was no longer just a memory. It was something that could never be broken. Adam smiled weakly, his strength fading, but his heart filled with peace. "You're free, Luna," he whispered. "We're free." The Master of Shadows had been defeated, but at a cost Adam would never fully understand. The forest once again became a place of peace. But this time, it was not because of the Master's control. It was because of the love and sacrifice that had triumphed over darkness. And as Adam closed his eyes, surrounded by the forest he had once called home, he knew one thing for certain. The bond between him and Luna would never fade, not in this life, nor the next. As Adam and Luna's journey comes to a close, their bond proves stronger than any darkness. A sacrifice, a promise, and a love that could never be broken. It's a reminder that even in the face of impossible odds, hope and courage can prevail. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with someone who believes in the power of sacrifice and love. Let's keep spreading these powerful messages.